How's it going, guys? So today I saw quite a lot today in terms of visions, and it's a real immense jumbled mess that I have to try to piece together like a puzzle because it doesn't come like in a linear timeline necessarily from what I've seen. But I've been thinking about my last video and last dream every single day for long periods of time because of just how bothersome it is. um, Several aspects of that dream specifically as to why I would be taking a knee for this hideous beast. And in the dream, I was afraid and cowardly and was shaking in his presence because his presence was so tremendous and powerful that you couldn't contain yourself. It was just indescribable. The amount of power this being emitted. And the being I'm speaking of, I am confident, relatively confident, that it is the ancient god Moloch. And the fact that in the British Commonwealth Games that recently started in England, they come out with this massive bull, right? This basically, I would call it, should be an effigy of a bull, basically having people bow down to Moloch. And the timing is not coincidental because, from what I observed, now remember, before I keep going, what I'm about to talk about, you would have to go back and watch all my Crystal Garden videos. So, just as a fair warning, otherwise, you're not going to know what I'm talking about. And I don't really have time right now to go over every detail, but we know about Horus and Osiris, IPEDGO2, and its connection to a solar birth where the corona of the sun is expanding and it's creating a portal that will bring through an ancient Egyptian deity known as Horus, that will manifest on the earth and rule the earth. What's happening now is a power struggle, a very immense power struggle. So Moloch is a physical extraterrestrial being from, you guessed it, Taurus, the bull. Now, the confusion between Osiris and Moloch. Why is Osiris a reptilian from the dog star Canis Major, but he's also a bull? Is because Osiris's ancestors came from where Moloch is from Taurus. So they have a direct genetic lineage. Let's just say that Moloch is a much older, more advanced soul than Osiris, and Osiris is already one of the most advanced souls to the dark side, de-evolved to the dark side in the galaxy. So you can imagine Moloch being immensely more powerful. So this is the problem. This is what happened. Remember, this is timeless, these things, how they occur. So the Commonwealth Games, they spent months building this bull. But from the perspective of the gods and the ancient aliens, they already knew that in advance of what was to come. And the timing almost correlated with Moloch's actual arrival to the Earth. And he quite literally arrived here on a spaceship, quite literally on July the 5th. Why July the 5th? Was because that was another coronal contraction. Remember Horus birthing? Remember I made the video of CERN being like the shock absorber for all that seventh dimensional energy that's coming in from those higher realms as he births. What happened on July 5th was that they accidentally sent Moloch through the Stargate. And he's now here walking among us on Earth, demanding sacrifices, of course, like he's always demanded for thousands of years. And that's how he grows his power, and that's how he becomes darker. And why these entities even exist in the first place is beyond me. Um, I'm gonna have to really talk to God about this because it's just why it's hard. Okay, guys, it's really hard to imagine something growing in ever increasing darkness, but it happens. And this is what these entities do, including Horus and Osiris, in different ways. But they also, in some ways, have their own twisted sense of morality too. And I'll give you an example of that later. Um, so Moloch came through on July 5th when CERN was doing a massive experiment, and there was a massive coronal mass ejection on that very day. So he came through, and what he did was that he placed, so remember, there's 5 waves, 5 key waves of the solar birth. And I see a shadow like on the periphery of the sun as Horus exits the solar portal. What Moloch just did, the assistants of Osiris, is that they put some kind of almost like film, like translucent fog over the shadow to where it brings about a state of disorientation and confusion to Horus himself as he's trying to wake up, as Anubis is trying to wake him up, instead of having that clarity of vision and exiting through the portal naturally like a birth canal. That birth canal is now blocked by this artificial fog. That's what Moloch just did post July 5th. And as a result of that, massive celebrations were taking place below ground because of the belief that Moloch's ancestor, Osiris, is going to remain in power and remain in control of the human slaves of Earth. However, that's not necessarily the case. There are things that can be done to unblock this fog and have the birth commence as normal, but only time will tell if such a thing is even possible. So, a channel who watches me, please check him out. His name is Channel 333. Excellent channel. Does a lot of great material. Very good man. I was shocked to learn that he had the same dream that I had, and it's not only a dream, but a reoccurring dream. I vaguely remember him telling me about something similar, but the fact that he saw the same being, and let me just emphasize one more time the appearance of this being. Very, very tall, extremely bulky. That's one thing I didn't mention. Like a bull. Like a bull. His face was like this. It was a triangle. Not a perfect triangle, but it had like this oval-like contour to it. Brownish black skin. No hair that I could see. Very large oval eyes. But it's not the appearance that was bothersome. As I have to get into again, it's his immense energy. And I think why I was there, it's just what I do as a soul. I kind of like to, I'm a puzzle solver in the universe. I like to lurk in places I shouldn't be lurking. In this particular case, I think I was mentally projected to come there. Remember the out-of-body experience a few hours before that. I think something was implanted, or a spell, perhaps, to where I had to, it ended up having me manifest there later in the night because of whatever happened in that out-of-body experience. Perhaps as a form of mockery towards me, Channel 333, who may not necessarily be on the devil's or Osiris' side, which we're not, to basically tell us that, hey, look, jerks, look who's here. It's Moloch, and you're going to take a knee for him. It was a form of mockery, essentially, I feel. I mean, it was a really heavy experience, guys, and I think it was physical and real. Now, was I physically there? No, not necessarily. Of course, I'm going to get into that as well. And Channel 333, I think for similar reasons, because of his deep subconscious intuitive knowledge of these matters, also understands that they're trying to mess with us. Basically, I think they're trying to mess with us to say, hey, we're going to get our world, presuming that, like, they think like I'm on the side of Horus, right? Which is absolutely incorrect, 100%. I'm not taking any sides. I'm not bowing down to anyone. I don't want to take a knee to anybody. Everyone get away. I'm my own person. I do not want to, oh, master, I bow to you. No, that's what they want. That's what they want. That's the whole point of all of this. And perhaps us being in that dream was a way to force us to bow down to them. I literally thought if I didn't take that knee for Moloch, he would murder me right there and then. And the place felt so real and so physical, and the dream felt so real. I thought I would literally die right there. And the way that people were screaming in the auditorium, it didn't sound like a way I exactly wanted to die. And then probably later eaten cannibalistically. It's rough stuff, guys. It's really rough stuff. Of course, not necessarily true either. I'm not proclaiming this to be truth. I'm just telling you what I've seen. So, okay, one more thing. Okay, no, again, this is all jumbled up in my head. So, Osiris, he, what's going to happen if he remains in power? You guys already know what's going to happen. Remember we talked about this. I said, if he feels like there's nothing that he can do to keep his human cattle, he will launch the nukes and end it all. He has confidence now. He has a tremendous amount of confidence now because of what happened on July 5th. And he truly thinks that he will remain in power. And as a result, what will happen is a lot more people will end up in the silver pods and live in these virtual worlds than if Horus were to come. Much, much, much more. And it will be truly a technocratic slave grid, worse than 1984, worse than Klaus Schwab's "you'll be own nothing and be happy," worse than that. It will suck. It will absolutely suck tremendously. Now, here's the difference between Osiris and Horus. Osiris remains in power. Long-term pain. You're looking at decades more of pain. The reality is going to be swallowed up by the black hole and the new earth will birth regardless. I wanted to make that clear. But it's going to be slow, painful. It still is. I mean, this process is still slow and painful, but there's going to be a lot more people in this virtual reality and not even know that there's this new earth birthing. So that's a problem in itself. Horus, on the other hand, has a vendetta against Osiris's creation, which is his human slaves. And he thinks it's the moral, remember their sense of twisted morality, the moral thing to do to wipe us out, wipe as many of us out as much as humanly possible by what the Bible says. Brother will fight against brother, neighbor will fight against neighbor, country will fight against country. And that's exactly what you'll see, the whole world looking like Ukraine. You'll have Guatemala fighting against Nicaragua, Mexico fighting against Texas, British Columbia fighting against Washington. You'll have Belgium fighting against the Netherlands like they did in the 1800s. All these random places. Freaking Angola fighting against Congo. I don't know. Like everything. Everything. And there is a group of people he would want to spare, though. And that group of people are the Muslims. Why? Why would Horus care about the Muslims? Let me explain. When Muhammad was in that cave, and he was a very real person, by the way, tripping his balls off on shrooms, he thought God came to him, or Abraham and others. It was Horus who came to him and told him these prophetic truths, so to speak. So he sees Islam as Horus sees Islam as his own infiltration into his father's system. He wanted to plant a seed into the minds of man for the eons to come so that they can grow in the way he wanted them to, the way he envisioned, right? A patriarchal society on an extreme level, which in many cases, sorry to say, Islam is. So is Judaism. But anyway, okay, so losing my train of thought here. Okay. On the other hand, okay, sorry, this is so much information right now. I get a grip of myself. Okay, Horus, remember, so he is not a fan of his father. The common legend indicates that he is. Okay, that he wanted to avenge his father's death by essentially killing Seth. That's not why he wanted to harm Seth. The original story, remember we discussed this, is that Seth destroyed the original Crystal Garden and turned it into that black hole hell. That's why Horus wants to avenge Seth, not because of his father Osiris. He does not like his father, despite what common myth and legend tells us. He does not. This is all about the Crystal Garden and him wanting to create his. He wants to be the leader of the new world. But ultimately speaking, none of these deities are going to be the leaders of the new world. Remember what I said many times before. It's Christ who will return and basically destroy all these beings, suck them into that black hole as the solar portal finally closes, or as I speculate around the year 2300, as I discussed before. And no one will rule over us, essentially. Christ doesn't rule over anything. A truly godly, loving being doesn't rule, doesn't control, doesn't ask to be worshipped, doesn't want anyone to bow down to him. A true being of light is humble. Why did Jesus wash the feet of those people? That's because a true being of light is humble. He doesn't pound his chest and ask to be worshipped. So, one more thing and I'll head out. About this physical place underground, right, where this massive feast was taking place. People dressed very handsomely with tuxedos and big dresses, and it looked like a red carpet in Hollywood kind of thing. It sort of was. So does that mean that, like, Katy Perry literally drove to this place and went there? Possible, but unlikely. Here's what I mean when I say it's physical. Many of those beings are clones. So that was probably a clone of Katy Perry. And in the middle of the night, they probably had her original form or a portion of her consciousness transfer to her clone and experience that which she was experiencing. So most of those people are likely clones of the original, possibly even myself there. And where a portion of my consciousness was synchronized with that avatar who was experiencing that specific thing. But what about the different years people came from? That does sort of imply something ethereal, right? Something non-physical. Not necessarily, though. We could be talking about very literal time travel, um, physical time travel from other versions of Earth, maybe other dimensions, all sorts of possibilities. Um, is it possible some people literally physically drove to that mountain and went in there? Yes, some I think have. A handful, maybe out of the thousands that were there, the original non-clone physical beings, probably some very powerful people, powerful elites we don't know about, not people we see on the news, um, likely were there physically in person, yes. Overall, I think it's a real place, and I think Moloch is really here, and now the battle has taken up a whole new level. It's going to get fierce now. It's going to get really fierce on who controls the human race, who controls our destiny, who controls our future. It really should be us individually who does that, but since most people, like we saw in Woodstock 99, even though they were bombarded with frequencies, people have a herd mentality. They just do. And they're easily controlled. And that's sad. And that's all.